have been raising sheep for 33 years. It started out as my 4-H project. And my very first sheep, her name was Tootsie, and she was 50% Texel. My uncle had bought the first Texel ram for sale in the US back in about 1990, and that is whose ram bred our 4-H projects. I raise purebred registered Texels because they are so meaty. They thrive on eating just grass and turn it into muscle, which is what we turn into meat, and that is what is in our dinner plates. I can pick the best animal by having real raw data that tells me how big their muscle is. All the lambs in this pasture have a nice little buzz cut where I sheared between their 12th and 13th rib. Their loin muscle was measured with ultrasound equipment to see what size it is. And then I can analyze that data myself, but I also have chose to do the National Sheep Improvement Program, which is NSIP, you'll hear it called, where they take a ton of sheep data, not just in the United States, but actually in other parts of the world, and they can analyze it and tell you the estimated breeding value of each sheep and how likely they are to pass that on to their offspring, so I can improve my sheep genetics. My sheep have been raised on pasture since I was in 4-H. They used to go graze with my uncle's sheep, and we sized our pastures then just based on the fencing and the dynamics of wherever place they were grazing. Now here on our farm, I learned what size paddock I need for a number of sheep and how much vegetation is in that paddock to actually rotationally graze and do it successfully. Rotational grazing is moving sheep from small paddock to small paddock within a big pasture. And there's a few reasons for that. The biggest one for sheep is parasites. The parasite cycle from when the sheep move into a pasture is about 4 days by the time the parasites start crawling back up the grass stems from being excreted from the sheep. So you want to move them every 3 days. At a maximum number of days. I shoot for about a day and a half. So this area here that I have fenced off for 35 ram lambs, they will eat in 2 days about. So I'll move them every other day out of here. I've been rotationally grazing sheep inside a solar array for a little over a year. A lot of it is not any different than rotationally grazing them without the panels. As far as you still need fencing, you still need them to have access to water. There's just other obstacles in the way when you're solar grazing. You need to place your fences if they allow you to put permanent ones in, which are right behind me here is woven wire that we attach directly to the I-beams instead of putting in more fence posts, so we reuse the structure that was already here. Every other fence has a water line on it so the sheep can access water from both sides of it, so it gives water to 2 different paddocks. My temporary fencing is just like you would divide your paddocks off in regular rotational grazing. That is electronet there. And that, as you can see, does inhibit coming into this area, but it is temporary, so I can pick it up and move it. So I put my temporary fencing along driveways. You'll see there's no permanent fencing there. And then to divide my paddocks in the opposite direction. So those are east to west versus my permanent fencing that runs north to south. I recently was able to divide my paddocks and cut my grazing plan setup of 1 acre paddocks to a ½ acre, but there's not much other flexibility to make it smaller where the infrastructure is in the way. So when you graze a solar site with sheep, there's a vegetation maintenance contract, which they pay the landscaper or the shepherd to keep the vegetation from shading the panels, so they produce at their highest optimal efficiency. So you do have to see when that vegetation is reaching the bottom of the panels, because then the sheep might have to move to that paddock versus moving them in a very coordinated system. The electricity generated from this site goes directly into the grid, which is about a ½ a mile down the road from our farm. And the power is going directly to the grid, does not go directly to my house. We have our own solar system at our farm that does offset our farm use of electricity. So this solar site, which is about 30 acres, is enough power for 1,200 homes. So it does offset all of that power use in our whole township with just 30 acres. When we were approached to put a solar site on our farm, our biggest concern was stray voltage for any of the animals that are on our farm, not just directly in the solar site, but on the whole farm. Having done a pre-test and a post-test from when the solar site was installed, the stray voltage actually in our whole area here, not just our farm, but all the neighboring farms, actually decreased because of all the extra grounding wires they put in that were buried all the way to the substation. One concern I had about grazing my sheep in an area that is open to other people to come in that have to do maintenance on the solar site was biosecurity. Anybody who brings in anything on their shoes can make the sheep sick. Some people are very respectful of that, others are not, and I think it's because they don't understand the risk of them bringing in a disease to my farm. Something we had concern about is the electrical that is flowing everywhere, cords, electrical wires hanging all over the place, and strangulation for the sheep was another concern. And the company we work with has done a ton to even move them up higher than originally was planned, so the sheep cannot access them very easily. Some other concerns I had was how many sheep it was going to take to graze 30 acres. My current pasture, or my original sheep pasture, is only 8 acres, so this is over 3 times the size of my original plans for my flock. So we had to triple our flock to be able to have the sheep maintain the grass so I don't have to mow it. Another thing that really helps is the shade they receive from the panels. So if it was a really, really warm day today, all the sheep would be stationed here under the shaded areas of the panel, and they can sit and eat there all day long. And they don't even have to go in the sun if they don't really want to. They are the happiest sheep around. Fertility for me and whether the sheep are going to thrive out here kind of all goes together. Is my flock going to still conceive and have babies and good reproduction and be healthy to have babies? Which we've seen great things because there's actually better pasture planted out here than in my other sheep pasture. So they're getting a lot better nutrition.
We've got some chicory, which has health benefits for the sheep, and then a mix with a lot of orchard grass. I've got alfalfa right here that the sheep really love, and also a couple of different kinds of clover, another favorite. Yeah, we usually let the grazer pick the seed mix. So Olivia picked the pasture mix and they also seeded it. So that was really helpful.
We lamb about 70 ewes each year. This year at our high point, we had 170 Texel sheep on the farm. We custom raise dairy heifers for a local farmer. We raise a few beef cattle, and then we crop about 300 acres of land. Most of those crops stay here and are fed to the livestock. One reason we decided to sign a lease for solar on our farm was for more diversification on our farm. I like to tell people you can't have all your milk in one bucket. So we have decided to go through different avenues of diversification to keep our farm sustainable.
The sheep are really great lawnmower replacements. People really connect with sheep, even in permit meetings or site tours. Everyone's, myself included, so excited to see sheep. It's really important to people that we're not just using the land as a place to have the panels, but actually valuing the land itself. And farmers have such a deep connection with the land. So it's also a way for us to just be more collaborative with people, to continue being able to have Halbur's Heavenly Hill here and keep it a family farm. I think just anytime we can try to put the two together, we love having grazers, or if people have other ideas for how to use the land between the panels. And it's really important to the communities, but it's also great for the soil health.
And someday these I-beams can be pulled directly out of the ground and my soil is still here to farm the land.